over how fat loss works so we can cover exactly the things that we need to understand about how we achieve fat loss specifically, and also why the scale and your scale weight is going to be an important part of tracking things as we progress over these next few weeks. So I've got a few notes here. I'm just going to touch through some of these points, but if there's any at any point you want to jump in and unmute yourself and just ask a question, feel free to do that. We'll take a minute to have a chat on whatever it is that you got the question about. But otherwise, I'll just keep going and I'll try and get through this without boring you too much. But first of all, let's clarify, because there's a lot of confusion often around these terms because we have weight loss and we also have fat loss. Now, weight loss is a very generic term. So, fat loss being body fat, weight loss being anything, basically, anything within your body that weighs something, we can lose that via weight loss. So if we're being very general with our efforts to see our scale weight change, then we can lose things that we don't really want to lose. So obviously muscle being the main one, the most important one there. So if we are losing weight, this is generally when we are not focused on the strength or the training aspect of any kind of health and fitness regime. So, having a focus on strength training is really, really important if you want to specifically target fat loss. Because, as I put here, you can't get stronger if you lose muscle. And if we're losing weight by any means, then that usually means that we're losing muscle along through that journey. So, we want to be more specific with what we're doing with your diet. If we are not, then unfortunately losing muscle through a weight loss attempt means that we do unfortunately impact your metabolism in a way that actually makes it harder for you to maintain or sustain your new body further down the line. So the more muscle we can build, or at the very least hold on to through a fat loss diet, the easier time you're going to have with making long-term changes. So what we want to do is strategically and more specifically target fat loss. So that's going to be how we go about setting up your diet, how we go about your training, even your lifestyle, how we set up your lifestyle, the kind of habits that we implement. And then this long term is hopefully going to help you to have a much clearer understanding of your metabolism, because we're not all the same. You know, we are individual. Some people can respond very differently to, even if it was two identical people, in terms of the body shape and the weight and the height and the gender and all things like that that impact that how many calories you may need from one person to the next. How you then respond to having high or low calories, that can be very, very unique and individual. So it is important that you start to learn about your body and how your body reacts to the different things that you can throw at it when you go through fat loss diets or muscle gain diets, etc. So the more we can learn about your body, the more empowered you can feel, the more in control you can be long term. Because we want favorable outcomes over a long period of time, and not to be kind of going through this yo-yo effect where we tend to see weight loss efforts leaving people. So a calorie deficit, if you have any idea around fat loss, weight loss, you will know already that it is the calorie deficit that you need in order to lose body fat. So that means whatever your maintenance requirements are. So for you to maintain your existing weight, your existing body, your existing muscle mass and fat mass, everything as it is already, you have a maintenance requirement that if you ate that amount of food, so when we say eat, I also mean if we consume the amount of calories through whether it's food or drink, it's important to understand that both food and drink are contributing to your energy intake. If we eat at maintenance, we maintain our body. So in order for us to lose any kind of mass from the body, whether it's fat or muscle, we need a caloric deficit. So this is less calories than your maintenance. Okay, so that is the only possible way that we are going to change your body weight and lose body fat. So What we want to try and do to achieve that caloric deficit is to use a combination at all times of both diet and exercise. The diet is obviously fairly simple. We have to eat and drink less calories than what we probably normally do, particularly if we've been through a period of gaining weight, then obviously we have been in a surplus of calories, which is typically what we would do if we want to pursue a muscle gain goal. We have to have a surplus of calories to more optimally build muscle on your body. So when we want to lose the weight, we need a calorie deficit. We achieve that with diet and exercise. But lifestyle factors as well can play a big part in this. So making sure we get rest, sleep, making sure we're not living our lives on a completely stressed out schedule, making sure we don't just, spend every day getting absolutely wound up about everything. This is not helpful for your health. It's not helpful for your body composition. It's not helpful for your mindset, your mental health, etc. So we have to obviously try and set up our lifestyle that complements our goals. And alongside that, we obviously need to be having some sort of consistency to build some momentum. And then once we're actually applying things, we need to be monitoring. So this is why I'm a big proponent of making sure we are checking your weight, checking your measurements. We're seeing how your clothes fit. We're seeing what our energy levels are like. We're seeing how we feel about ourselves. We're tracking our progress in the gym. So just taking a big, wide view on how everything is going through these different areas so that we can have a much bigger and clearer picture on exactly what's happening. So accuracy with your nutrition is going to be highly recommended by me because without this accuracy, we then don't really get the opportunity to learn things about calories and macros and your favorite foods and how that can fit into your week, how it can fit into your weekend, and all of these little manipulations that I probably do myself now just without even thinking about it when I'm eating and setting up my meals through the week. When I have a goal in mind, I know what to do because of the fact that I've taken so much time to track things and learn about things and search, okay, what is in this food? What is in that food? I've read the labels on almost every food that I like to eat. I've searched it, scanned it, weighed it, tracked it. And over time, that builds this mental picture where I basically don't need to do that anymore. Although it's still a really good accountability tool and I will still use it as that. I don't actually need to most of the time because of the fact that this has been a learning curve for me to go through. So it's important also to distinguish and establish really which kind of phase that you are in, because it can be quite difficult if we're trying to really focus heavily on weight loss, fat loss, and changing your body shape, whilst also trying to go through this phase of learning about food and trying to discover how we manage this better and trying to learn the things that we essentially need to brush up on long term. It can be difficult to do both of those things at the same time. So in that case, we often have to take the pressure off with what our expectations are around how quickly we can achieve results and how quickly we can see change. So it's important to understand that if you are still learning a lot at the moment, when we're looking at food labels and trying to understand things, then just try to be kind to yourself and understand that you are at the start of your journey compared to a lot of other people that you might compare yourself to or compare your results to. So we have to just be a little bit aware of that, just so that we have your expectations in the right place. But having said that, we still want to make sure we are not wasting time too much, because if the goal is to lose weight, we only have to get a handful of things right, to lose weight. I say weight, but what I'm aiming at is body fat specifically, obviously, as we just discussed, because it's a slightly more specific thing when we want to lose body fat. But if we do want to lose body fat, we only have to get a handful of things right and just be consistent with those things. So these images here, which I'm sure you've already had a good look at the moment, but let's just talk about these and why these are important. So we've briefly touched on these already, but the caloric deficit, first of all, this is through your diet. So if we look at these first two here on the left, caloric deficit, this is eating and drinking, generally consuming less calories than what you're currently doing. The macro specific diet is obviously where we don't just eat less calories, but we also try to get really smart with what we choose with the calories that we do eat. So, as you can see here, protein, carbs, and fats. These are your three main macronutrients. So, the nutrients we eat in larger quantities. So, this is like your chicken breast, your pasta, and your olive oil, or your nuts, or your avocado, your protein, your carbs, and your fats. So, different food types essentially. So we need less calories and we need to start making some smarter choices with the calories that we do eat, because when we eat in the right proportions of these macronutrients, this is how we more effectively change your body composition. So we don't just lose weight, we actually hold on to the muscle mass that we have, and we have a better, easier time repairing and rebuilding your muscle mass from your training that we're hopefully going to be doing alongside the diet. So this is really your energy intake, these two parts. And these next two parts in the middle here, strength specific training. So I've briefly mentioned already that if we are not strength training, then we are going to have a harder time holding on to your muscle. So unfortunately, with any quality within physical fitness and strength, any skill even that we learn with your body, if we don't use it, we lose it. And with muscle, this is more true than ever. Your body does not want to hold on to muscle mass because it costs more energy in terms of the calories required to maintain that mass on your body in comparison to body fat. So it's easier for your body to hold on to a little bit of fat as it is for it to build and maintain muscle mass. So, with that said, if you have muscle and you go into a low calorie diet and you don't do anything to stimulate or train your muscle, it is likely that your body will offload that muscle because it wants to basically revert to the easiest possible path to keeping you alive. Okay, so when we strength train, we can essentially bypass that outcome of ending up with your body just throwing away muscle because it feels like it doesn't need it. So obviously, if we give your body a reason for it to need to keep the muscle, then it's going to be much more likely that you're actually seeing the changes in body fat. So we're seeing the reduction in body fat and we're maintaining the muscle and the strength, because we can still build muscle and build strength even though we are on a low calorie diet where we're more specifically targeting fat loss. It's not the most optimal way of building muscle and strength, but that is not to say that it can't happen, especially if you have a lot of weight to lose. Essentially, that is a whole bunch of energy that is available on your body to be tapped into. And when we free up that energy, it can go towards some of these processes that essentially we need to, the body needs to do when it comes to repairing and growing your muscle tissue to recover you from your training sessions. Now, next one here, consistent non-specific movement. So essentially, that's a long-winded way of saying hitting your step count. Excuse me. Non-specific movement. This is basically just factoring in your lifestyle and not being a lazy person. I could not put it any more simple than this. If at any opportunity you get to take a few extra steps and you're mindful of that and you do that consistently, you are using the simplest form of exercise and you're doing that frequently. That is going to have you burning through more and more and more calories over and over and over and over again. Now, what tends to happen as you go through a fat loss diet, your body is going to try and automatically down regulate that stuff that you do, which is why I think it's so important for you to have a step count and for you to be tracking your steps and to be mindful of how many steps you are hitting. Because if we are guessing and we're not really taking any kind of measurement, then essentially we don't know how much we're moving. We don't know if we can adjust this output that we have in order to achieve better results. So, for example, if you're only doing 5,000 steps and you think you're doing 10,000, but you don't actually know, well, it would be pretty handy for you to know that, hang on, I'm only getting 5,000 steps. I can double that and I can burn an extra, could be, 300 calories per day just by doubling my step count, which could be just doing those extra, that extra walk with the dog or the extra lap around the block when you do go for your walk. So it's really important that we have a bit of a handle on that and we understand how much we are moving just generally throughout your day-to-day life. Then we've also got a really important one which gets overlooked, and I'm constantly drumming this into my one-to-one clients, but this is the quality of your rest and your sleep routines. So I would also put into that bucket as well your stress, as I touched on earlier. If we are highly stressed, it's likely that our nervous system is just a bit wound up. We're not getting the time to actually relax and repair and recover your body. So it's just going to mean that you're in a bit more of a unrecovered or under recovered state than what we would like to have. Because naturally, as you are in a caloric deficit, you're eating less calories than what your body needs. Over time, this accumulates as a little bit of stress on your body. It does start to suck a little bit when you're doing this for weeks and months on end. That's how it should feel because that is the nature of reversing the thing that we do when we eat too much and we basically get too comfortable. We overeat, we overconsume, we don't move enough. That is essentially the opposite. We have to experience some negative impact to reverse that, unfortunately. Now, that can be softened by going slower, can be softened by, taking a break here and there. By you might diet for 2 weeks, you might have a break for a week. You might diet for 2 weeks, have a break for a week. So, aside from all of those kinds of things, it is important to just understand that we need to recover as well as possible. We need to sleep as well as possible because this actually has been shown to impact your fat loss results as well. So if we do not sleep enough, and by enough, I mean 7 hours or more, if we don't sleep that amount, it is likely that the weight that we do lose is going to come more proportionally from muscle than we would like to see it come from. So, if you want to lose more fat and retain more muscle, then work on your sleep, get to bed on time, be consistent with your sleep and wake times, and try to make sure that you get 7 hours every night as a minimum. That is what I will be shooting for. I know in practical terms, that's a lot easier said than done, especially when you have a 6-month-old like we do. Sleep is hit and miss and it's difficult at times, especially when you start to add in hunger into the mix and other things, it gets difficult. But we want to be constantly working on this because this is an area that when we get more out of this, you feel more energized, you feel more alert, your focus is better, you'll be able to better regulate your nutrition. You'll be able to control your food and your appetite and your cravings better. We're going to perform better in the gym. We're going to recover better. Endless things, positive things happen when we sleep better. So the last one, expel more carbon. Now, a lot of people don't realize that actually when we're losing body fat, we are literally breathing out your body fat. When we lose body fat, you breathe it out. Okay, so essentially everything that you consume is basically a carbon chain within your body, whether it's protein, carbs, fat. The energy is just a series of carbon bonds within your body. And when we burn off energy, we basically free up these carbons and they go around your bloodstream. And in order for us to get rid of that because your body doesn't want these free carbons floating around your body, it gets transferred through into your lungs from your bloodstream and we breathe out the excess carbon. So this is literally how we burn off and expel the body fat from your body. So what that tells us is if we breathe more So we speed up your respiration and we do more things that get you out of breath. This is going to be naturally a much easier path to take when we factor in losing body fat. So if we combine the caloric deficit with your diet, with the consistent strength and regular movement through your steps, we get a win-win effect. But then when we also start to add in some other forms of exercise that get us into a state of breathing heavier for longer periods of time, like some steady state cardio, for example, this is exactly what I'm talking about here. When we add in some low intensity cardio and we try to sprinkle that in through the week whenever we can, this is win-win, and it's doubling up the impact of your calorie deficit because we are expending more energy than we're consuming. And we're also speeding up that respiration. So we're breathing more heavily. We're basically giving your body an opportunity to expel that carbon, and we're going to breathe out the body fat. So regardless of whether you do cardio or not, whether you choose to do cardio or not, we can still lose body fat just by strength training and just by your diet. We can also still lose body fat just purely from your diet. But obviously, for the reasons we've discussed, we want to maintain your muscle and strength. We want to build muscle and strength even. We also want to try and keep your cardiovascular health and fitness in a good place. So that's a good reason for us to do some cardio, especially as you get older. This is the number one thing that is going to give you longevity in life. If you can get yourself fit as well as strong, so we're talking cardiovascular fit, this is the number one thing that's going to expand your quality of life. It's going to give you a longer, healthier life, and it's going to offset all of the cardiovascular diseases that we don't want to run into trouble with as we get older. So caloric deficit through the diet, macro specific diet. So that's eating enough protein basically and not going over your calorie target. We don't need to worry too much about the carbs and fats. We just need enough protein within your calorie target, and that's job done. Strength specific training. So making sure we are adhering to a program. So we all have a program to follow. We all know what to do in the gym. We all need to tick off the workouts and try to build muscle and strength with your training. Consistent movement. So getting your steps in, going for a walk, as Karen is doing right now. Karen's off doing her steps, or she's wandering around the garden. I don't know. All I can see is the sky. But um, quality rest and sleep. So making sure we've got our lifestyle supporting the goals that we're trying to work towards. And if possible, if we can layer on top some cardio, some extra movement that gets you out of breath, it can be anything. Can be playing with your kids. It can be playing a game of netball. It can be going to the gym and just watching an episode of your show on your iPad while you sit and pedal on your bike. It doesn't have to be a super high intensity, but obviously if we speed up that respiration, we get breathing, we can hit two birds with one stone by doing those kinds of things. It can just be a fast-paced walk. Anything that basically helps you to get out of breath more often is going to be a helpful thing. So those are some of the big things that we need to adhere to. Now, let's just spend a few minutes just quickly talking about the scale. So what I do recommend is that you are weighing yourself daily, and we do that at the same time. So every day in the morning, as soon as you wake up, we go to the toilet, urinate, or do whatever you need to do, normal business. Before you consume any food and drink, you weigh yourself, because that is the most optimal time when we can control as many of the variables as possible. So same time, same place, same scale, same position on the floor in your bathroom. Everything is kept identical. And then we have a much more accurate representation of your weight. When you see these people who are weighing themselves in the gym in the afternoon, by that point, it's almost so pointless to weigh yourself, because so many different things, as soon as you start your day, that are variables, whether it's stress, whether it's the timing of your food, the type of your food, the amount of salt in your food, the amount of fiber in your food, the type of fiber in your food. All of these different things are going to impact your weight, and they're going to fluctuate your weight up and down. So the more we can eradicate that and just do things the same, even still, we're going to see a large amount of fluctuations up and down consistently. That is what your body does. We can't avoid that. So the more we can just do it all at the same time, the more likely it is that we can minimize those variables and not have that confusing matters more than it needs to, more than it already does. So I would recommend also for you to be weighing yourself and tracking your weight, whether your goal was fat loss, whether your goal was to maintain your weight, or whether it's to build muscle and add weight to your body. Now, the reason for that is obviously we want to try and make this as predictable as possible. We want to try and get the feedback that we need when we need it to know, because this basically tells us if we're eating too much, not enough, if we're doing a perfect job, it gives us the feedback that we need basically. So we keep the variables under control as much as we can. So by weighing in at the same time, we minimize all those things with the hydration, the sleep, the stress, the contents of your gut, as I just briefly went into. But then also we have to understand that fluctuations are normal, as I said. So your progress can be masked. For example, you could be doing everything right. However, you could have been and had a meal or used a sauce, for example, the night before in your dinner. Could be something that's very high in sodium, and it could just send your weight up, and it could be a kilo more than what it was on track to be, bearing in context with the rest of the week. It could be that you slept really poorly. Now, for me, I always notice if I sleep, say, 3, 4, 5 hours instead of a good 7+ hour sleep, I wake up in the morning, my gut does not feel right. It has not had the time that it needs to do the work it needs to do. I'm stressed. My body is holding on to fluid and it's like inflammation basically. So I know before I even get on the scale after a bad night's sleep that the weight is probably not going to show me a true reflection of what it would be had I stepped on that scale being well rested, and all conditions being a little bit better. Then we've got stress. If you're highly stressed, you're going to have high levels of cortisol. This is basically, again, it's just inflammation in your body. Your nervous system isn't getting the time to undo some of that stress. So we're not very relaxed. We're in this kind of fight or flight response, which is not good for your body releasing the hormones and doing the things that it needs to do. If we're sick, same kind of thing. If we're going through a menstrual cycle, again, same kind of thing. It's hormones, it's going to be your fluid balance, all sorts of things changing in your body. Even if we start to have different cravings, we eat different amounts of food. All of these things obviously make your scale weight a bit less predictable. So it's just important that we bear in mind that it's never going to be a straight line and we're never going to see this perfect path to your goals. It is going to be quite erratic. It's going to be up and down, up and down. That is very normal. So why it matters? Well, I mentioned a couple of times, but if we are weighing in and we're checking and we're actually making some assessment of what's happening with your weight, this shows us, are we being adherent enough? Do we need to make any changes to your nutrition? So it allows you to collect some data. We can learn about your body over time, how you feel and how you look at various weights. This is always something that I find quite interesting, having done this for a long time. Um, I notice how I look at certain weights. So I know if I am 80 kilos, for example, I know usually what I look like. And sometimes I will go through a period of trying to gain some muscle, trying to gain some weight, and then I'll go through another period of fat loss and I'll get back to that 80 kilos. And I think, shit, okay, now I can see the body composition changes that I've worked all those months for, and I can see that I look slightly different at that 80 kilos than I did before. And this is long term, really, the process that we're talking about when we're talking about body composition changes and losing fat, building more muscle so that we change your body shape. So it also enables us to accurately determine your calorie requirements as well. When we're tracking your weight, we're being consistent with measuring things. We can actually really accurately determine, and it sometimes makes me laugh when I have clients and they tell me, "Yeah, I'm sticking to my calories," and their weight is going up and or it's staying the same and it's not budging for X amount of weeks, because I already know roughly what you are eating. If I know your height, your gender, your age, your body weight, your activity levels, I can basically tell you almost, within 50 or 100 calories, exactly what you are likely to be eating. So sometimes I'll give somebody a calorie target and they say, "Yep, I'm being really consistent with this." And I have to say, "Look, I know that is not the case because I can see what's happening with your weight. I can see the exercise that you're doing, and all things considered, we are a way off from what you think you're eating. So where are the inaccuracies? What do we need to do about that?" So this is why the honest approach and really checking this and starting to learn about this stuff can be so helpful, because without that awareness, we just tend to think that we're right and we think that we're doing things right and we get frustrated when it doesn't work and we don't know where to go from there. So it's important that we do start to factor in some of these things, because the accuracy will always pay you back long term when we can really understand your body and how you respond. So it does provide some really rapid insight for measuring your progress, and it informs us of your adherence and your consistency. So that's about it. So the last one there was just, it obviously takes away any of the guesswork when we're checking your weight alongside the centimeters. And as I touched on earlier, other things like how your clothes fit, your energy levels, how you're recovering. These are all just other areas that we can kind of assess and see how things are tracking along. Now, this was, I thought, an interesting slide just to pull up, because I showed this to some of my one-to-one clients before when I was talking to them about some habits and routines. But if we look at this, this is a like a all-time chart for four different clients that I've worked with. And the important thing here is that all of these clients were actually working towards fat loss. And for whatever reason, this wasn't always the case of the results that were actually being achieved. Now, from top left to top right to bottom left to bottom right, this is kind of the order that it runs in terms of how well or how good a job these clients were doing at basically sticking to the things that they needed to stick to in order to get the results. So top left, if we want to lose body fat and we gain weight and we go up the other way, clearly we are not doing a very good job of sticking to anything that we need to stick to. So when we are assessing your weight and we're tracking your weight, this gives you the feedback. So if we see things starting to, as you can see here on the left, it's going down, we're doing a pretty good job here up until about halfway. And then something changes, stress, we lose sight of whatever we're trying to do. And we basically take our eye off the ball, think everything's fine. It's not. And then within a few months, we packed on a few kilos and we've gone backwards very quickly. So it is a really, really helpful and quick tool for you to basically look back at your week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, at the most 4 weeks, for you to make a really informed decision of whether you've been doing enough of the right things or not. And you can see that clearly here. So a lot of these points, I have had conversations with these clients and I've really tried to steer them back in the right direction, which at times has worked for a period of time. And then at other times, people can go off the rails and they stop doing the things that they need to be doing. But very quickly, you can start to see how, and you can start to appreciate how you would feel if you felt like you were putting in so much work to get yourself to your goal, but then things over the long run were just going in the opposite direction. This is obviously not what we want to achieve. And this is the value of the accountability here, and also the ongoing consistent measurement of where your results are heading. So this is why I'm a big proponent of actually assessing things, making sure we're paying attention to the progress that we're making, and just checking in with what's changing, how quickly it's changing, whether we're doing enough, and asking some honest questions about how we're moving along towards your goal. So as you can see, the bottom right one here, this is absolutely fantastic adherence to go in such a straight line towards this lower end down here. That is unbelievable. And obviously the complete opposite to kind of seeing things over time going up and away and out of control. So that, credit to that person. That is a fantastic outcome, and this is really what can happen when you're just consistent and you commit to getting the job done. So really important to realize that if you do pay attention to the things that I'm teaching you and talking to you about, you will win, and you will win very quickly. And yeah, that's how a lot of you guys have come into this program. You want to obviously get some quick wins, which is exactly how we've been set up with everything that we're doing. So hopefully that's what's going to happen over the next few weeks.